everyone, and thank you for joining us on Kitchen Table Talk. This morning we have our patron, Chris Smith. How are you?
Good, thank you, Anita.
That's good. And we have Rachael from the Green Shirts movement up in Queensland. And as you can see with the cow behind her, she's involved with the cattle industry. So how are you, Rachael?
Good, thanks, Anita.
Excellent, thanks for joining us. Can you just quickly explain what the Green Shirts movement is all about?
Look, we're sort of, I suppose, say that we're the voice for, or a voice for rural, regional and reasonable people. So we were founded on the back of the vegetation management laws, which were quite draconian, being brought in 2018 in Queensland. So basically what we are trying to do is we're a different form of advocacy, because we're finding that the last 20 years, the current sort of advocacy groups don't seem to be getting any more traction. So we're sort of just adding our voice to that, and hopefully we can move things in a positive direction.
Wonderful. So the whole idea of Kitchen Table Talk is to explain to everyday people what things are happening in our communities, and also the people that are doing wonderful things in our communities in the agribusiness sector. And of course, on letsgetrural.org, there's already a lot of videos that we've done. And with our patron, Chris Smith, he's a great voice for us in rural Australia as well on 2GB and Sky News. And we thank you very much for your support, Chris, and for having us on when we've got something to say that needed to be said. So the flavour of the day at the moment is the foot and mouth disease, which really needs to be discussed. So Chris, just coming over to you, being a city person with a rural background and focus, how are you finding city folk reacting to the foot and mouth disease potentially wiping out $80 billion plus industry?
Yeah, I actually think that city folk really don't understand the scope of this. They certainly don't understand how it would impact their lives. I think they appreciate that for, rural people, it will be devastating. And they keep hearing about the costs, and they keep hearing about livestock that has to be put down if it were to sweep through, and how long it might affect rural Australia. But I don't know whether there's a great awareness of the impact on them. That is, forget about what's on supermarket shelves at the moment because of supply chain disruptions. That reality will be on their basics, on their meat, on their products that they purchase almost every single day. And the products that they might get access to if we were to have foot and mouth disease in this country would be 20 times more expensive for them in that scenario. And that's something that hasn't the penny hasn't dropped here. And I've had discussions both publicly and privately with people in the city, and that the penny has not dropped at all. And one of the reasons why the penny hasn't dropped, I think, is because the government has been slow to react. Yes, we've had, Murray Watt, the Senator and Agriculture Minister, who's a lawyer in Brisbane, buzz off to Indonesia. But very little done in terms of the biosecurity measures that could be undertaken at our customs doorstep. Things like footpads, which are only just being brought in slowly at airports now. And bear in mind, we've known about this since May. And things like mandatory screening. It's almost as if, we cannot, disadvantage or delay those who come back from their holiday in Seminyak, Bali or Echo Beach. We can't possibly do that. So what we'll do, we'll screen randomly. And this is just not effective. This is not going to work. Now, when you consider what we've done with COVID and how every last piece of resource was thrown in terms of protocol, public service, man and woman power, and dollars, when you think about what we've thrown at COVID, we should be throwing that and more on foot and mouth. And we're just too slow to act. Now, maybe that's because the current government doesn't have a bushy within their ranks. And that could be the main reason, which is why they've stuffed the live cattle trade and ruined so many livelihoods in WA and elsewhere. But they're doing it again. And if they don't act and use all the weapons, use all the tools that they have at their disposal, we are in for one horrific period. It will be a crisis to match what we've experienced with COVID.
I agree, and well said. And it's not just your meat; it's your dairy products. It's right across the board. Tourism. If we can't transit around the country, it's the onflow. You mentioned about the not a bushy in the ranks. Well, the way that I see this is really standing right alongside the debacle of the Gillard days, when the live cattle export ban just decimated the country, and a lot of farmers are no longer with us, unfortunately, and a lot of communities haven't even recovered. And the mental anguish, the financial anguish, and basically the triple bottom line, that's the way I see it. Yep. And I've spoken to a lot of cattle farmers, and they're worried. They're worried. Not only just beef farmers, but dairy farmers as well. I was talking to a camel farmer recently, and she's also worried. So it can go right across the board. So Rachael, you're a cattle farmer.
Yep.
You breed Brahmas.
That's exactly right. So, So that one there, we are in a position where we can go to the domestic market where we're situated in the country, or our cattle actually go live export. So we were actually affected with that live export trade. So when you say a bushy in the ranks, I think it's just common sense in the ranks is what we need. And it's sort of got to a point where the people making the decisions for the nation are making them with a full tummy. They're not hungry. They've never felt hungry, and therefore, when they're making these decisions about food security, they're not really realizing what it actually means. And now I'm not for one moment saying that we're going to starve at all, but it does change people's perceptions when no, we can't. Oh, that's not available. And those people making the decisions aren't going to be the people that miss out on the products that are available on the shelf because they're 20 times higher. They're still going to have the ability to buy them, but they're making the decisions for the people who may not be able to. And we need to understand that this isn't just around a beef industry or a livestock industry. This means that machinery will not be able to go and be transported to where your soybeans are being harvested. So this has implications across the whole food and fibre sector, and that's not what's being taken into account.
No, certainly not. So a lot of people, and this is where the kitchen table talk comes in, a lot of people don't understand the level of biosecurity that is in place in the country. So you typically being a cattle farmer, you have to be very, very careful about what vehicles come in and out. I was talking to a dairy farmer, and actually he showed me a couple of years ago the wash bays, the extent of actually disinfecting gumboots, changing clothes when you leave the property, making sure that nobody just drives into the property, right from the milk tankers coming in. The level of scrutiny that goes into place, people just don't understand. You walk into the supermarket and you go, yeah, I need bread, milk, cheese. Okay, that's great. But they don't understand what happens and the logistics that happen behind the scenes to get that product. And what we're seeing is a level of not only, well, I'll call it a level of apathy, but it's also because of the uneducated factor. And that's why kitchen table talk is really, really important. So, Rachael, can you just walk me through what your biosecurity on your property is?
Oh, well, the first thing you've got to do is you have to have a visitor's book who's coming onto your property. You've got to track, your livestock movements from one paddock to the other. That can be done through an NLIS system. Now, we do have a great traceability system here, but you can just, drive Mack trucks through it. So we may be better than other nations, but it's still not the best. So when you sell cattle, you have to, you have to accompany that with a health declaration, what they may have had, whether that's a pour on to prevent, ticks and buffalo fly or whatever it is. That all has to be listed. It down to batch numbers and expiry dates. So and that's an obligation. That's a regulation that we must adhere to. We must have a biosecurity plan for our LPA. Now, the talk we are hearing from industry bodies and the powers that be in government is that we've got to have those right. Well, we can have those right, but what happens when someone drives down the road, or there is, when you think of the vast area that Australia is, and someone's place might be 500,000 acres, and someone's driven off down to a waterhole just to camp, they don't know about it. Cattle, feral pigs, whatever it is, come in. So it's this expectation that we've got to have our stuff right, and I believe that the majority of us do, but we need to be stopping it at the border. That's our biosecurity plan. Stop it before it even gets to the shores of the airport. That's what we need to do. It seems like we're almost relegating ourselves to the fact that it's going to get here, but let's just limit what it does when it gets here. That is just a ridiculous notion in my book.
Agree. Chris, I think I sent you the story of a farmer who was in the UK and he's in Australia now. Did you get that?
I did. I haven't seen it, Anita. I'm sorry. I haven't. Yeah. I've opened it and I've seen it, and it was a long story, and I was just balancing with sick children this morning, so
that's all right.
I didn't get to read it.
That's all right. But I found it to be very interesting because he spoke about his experience in the UK when foot and mouth was there, which we all saw on the news back then, of the cattle being burnt and how they tried to deal with it. But he actually mentioned the feral animal aspect, and he spoke about kangaroos. Now, I had a conversation with someone the other day, and he said the Andrews government has basically opened up so anyone in Victoria can go and camp on anyone's land without asking. Now, I just want everyone who's watching this to stop and think about the feral animal aspect. And I think, Rachael, you'll be able to put more of a slant on this. Kangaroos. Now, we all know that we have our green side of the coin that absolutely love the fact that we can't cull kangaroos and wild pigs and camels and so forth. What do you think the wider community, particularly in the city, and I'm not bagging city people, remember that, everybody, what do you think their take on the fact that, okay, they see foot and mouth disease, they hear that it could impact on their shopping? What do you think their understanding is on the level of disaster, that's the only word that we can use, that could have on Australia if we cannot have our feral animal population looked after and managed? What do you think their take is?
Well, my view is that they don't understand it and they don't appreciate it, because we've got this virtue signalling carrying through all ranks of society at the moment, where we've just got to do the right thing by the environment, and there's no negotiation, compromise or understanding of what that really means. It's almost as if, it's black or white, this argument, so we don't cull. It's black or white, so we don't do anything that could emit CO2. And I won't go into the conflict that exists with climate change at the moment, and the way we're being railroaded into something that is not scientific. I won't go into that. But what my point is, I think people don't understand that there is no such thing as black and white. It's all grey. And when we've got foot and mouth in a country, and we have a problem in exterminating feral pests, and that includes kangaroos, as many farmers would know, we're inviting and allowing circumstances in which foot and mouth could move from one point to another point. Of all the times in our history when we should be reassessing those rules, this is it. It's not just, we talk about the borders. Yes, we've got to do a lot more at the borders, and I don't think the government fully understands what they should be doing, because they've known about this since May. But the same thing exists with the impact on the inability to cull feral pests, this goes hand in hand with biosecurity at the moment. And, you know, okay, there are licenses that are given for feral pests to be taken out. But right now, we need to lift some of these rules. It's really important to lift some of these rules and to prepare for what may be one of our worst rural disasters, which will have an impact on all Australia. It might emanate from rural Australia, but it won't just be contained to rural Australia. As we've mentioned already in this little chat, it'll have an impact in the supermarkets, it'll have an impact with the price that we pay for goods, many goods, and it'll have an impact with what's available. And you talk about the disruption of supply chains. Well, we haven't seen the most part of that will be realised in an outbreak of foot and mouth. So, you know, why aren't state governments and state premiers and chief ministers discussing what they need to do in their own jurisdictions now about culling and allowing the culling of feral pests? There's not even a discussion. There hasn't been one comment done about that. It's all about what we might do at the borders, and that is it. We're amateurs. And, you know, if and when this happens, and now it's in supermarkets, in products, we know that, it can't be any closer to our livestock than it is right now. But if this happens, we can look back to these periods and look back at what is not being done right now. And we've got all the reasons to discover as to why this has occurred. And I just think, you know, people need to, it's once again that experience and that common sense that we were just discussing, and knowing where the dangers are. There's no awareness of what needs to be done. It's almost as if, we'll wait till it's done and we'll fight it when it hits our shores.
Close the gate once the horse is gone.
Yeah. Look, just actually on that. So I think nationally, and I could be sort of out a little bit, but nationally there is about 24 million feral pigs. Okay, so when you talk about it at a state level currently, the level of chatter from both government and opposition is negligible. There has not been anything. There may be one or two MPs, crossbenchers mainly, that are going to town about the importance of this. Now, one of the things you talk about, feral pigs. So the government in Queensland has just introducing an amendment to the Animal Protection Act. Now, in that, they want to ban yellow phosphorus baits, which is, you know, a CSSP or SAP, because, you know, they believe there is other options. There are no other viable options at the moment that can replace this. So you are taking a weapon out of our arsenal to defeat feral pigs while we have foot and mouth on our doorstep. We cannot control where these pigs go. And it is a known fact that pigs, the way they breathe, they actually expire and have a higher viral load than any other livestock. And you've got these going from farm to farm to farm to farm. And this is the ridiculousness of it. There should be, to put that at this point in time, there is just no other viable option. The other thing is, the Queensland government has decided, like we had a 1080 baiting basically stockpile in the Queensland government since the 1970s.
Can you just explain what 1080 is to people that don't understand?
Look, 1080 is unfortunately a necessary evil, in that it is a bait, and it's obviously ingested by feral animals, both dog and pig, to try and basically reduce their numbers. So whilst there isn't another avenue at the moment, we need all of these weapons, in our arsenal to get this over, because whilst as I said, it's a necessary evil, animals either contracting foot and mouth, that's not exactly a great animal welfare issue either. Remembering that these are, whether they're feral or not, no one's going to be seeing them tending to their ulcers and open wounds. So the Queensland government, the 1080 has been depleted, their bulk. So now it's up to local governments at a local government level to work with those that are actually make it. So there's that sort of commercial arrangement now. So obviously you can see that there's ebbs and flows when it comes to, you know, is there going to be enough funding at local government level to provide it for farmers to be able to do it? It's just a never-ending circle of just nonsensical, I should say, decisions that lead us down this path of, if it gets hit, what do we do? What can we do to that when you've limited our options?
Yeah, and these are the questions that need to be asked of the Agriculture Minister. Like I'm listening to city hosts, television, radio hosts ask questions of Murray Watt. These questions are not pertinent. The subjects that you raise now, Rachael, and you're raising, Anita, are the subjects that should be asked of the Agriculture Minister. I doubt whether he'd have an answer to any of that. I doubt whether he's had a conversation with any of the states and territories about the possibility of allowing far more extermination of feral pigs and feral animals. But this is all part of the picture that needs to be addressed. But I haven't heard that discussed at all.
So, given that we are all human beings, this is going to be directed to you, Rachael. We're all human beings and we all have things in our life where our mental health is tested. And when you're in a situation where you feel absolutely hopeless, helpless in a situation that has been thrown upon you and you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, how is the mental health of primary producers, Rachael? I mean, a lot of city people, they go, well, they choose to do it. They choose to farm. So, of course, you know, flood, drought, fire, mice plagues, feral animals, all the regulations, all of that. They choose to do that. Just leave, just do something else. But it's not that easy. What is the mental health like out there in your neck of the woods?
Well,
having something else thrown at you?
But first thing is that there is only 2% of our nation, approximately 2% of our nation does what we do, right? And we are out here because a lot of us are born out here. We love it. We do. And droughts, floods, all of those things that are thrown at us, you can take that on board because you know what you're getting into. It is the decisions that are made that are outside our remit, outside we can't have any control over what Murray Watt decides to do. And that is the problem. We are the ones that are that are affected most and listened to least. And that is the issue. It is getting, and look, this is why Green Shirts was born, because we've absolutely had enough. You can only regulate people so much before there is a breaking point. And that breaking point is, you know, and I'm not for 1 minute saying that Green Shirts is doing this, but go and have a look at New Zealand, where there was, you know, a howl of a protest in 2020, where there was 160 rural sort of towns that had every tractor there. That was a protest. The protest in the Netherlands, it's because people have had enough, and we are constantly seen as this offset or the whipping boy, or look, you know, we can, you know, whatever regulation it is, we can hammer it down to these people, and it is having an effect. I mean, go and, you know, there's a lovely lady, Mary O'Brien, you've probably seen her with Are You Bogged, Mate?
Yes.
So she did that because someone wasn't equipped enough to deal with the pressures and did an unthinkable, unimaginable and permanent thing. And he was no longer with us. So she is now booked out for 2 years, going around. The
Australian Horizons Foundation actually sponsored.
That's right. So she's booked out for 2 years, going around speaking to rural committees and just people in sheds, speaking about mental health. Now, if the mental health in rural Australia was a positive thing and we were all feeling great and not downtrodden, there wouldn't be a need. But there's a massive need.
Yeah, you're right. And the reason why I ask you that, Rachael, is because you are out there in the mix. And what we do at BEEFitUP Australia is we go out to our rural communities and we connect in with the local hotel, because the local hotelier is the one who knows everyone, sees everything, and hears everyone's woes, trials, tribulations, and you name it. And what we are finding, talking to our primary producers and the small businesses in those communities that are the heartbeat, that feed the people, that feed us, that provide every element from tourism to essential services to relaxed time, is mental health is one of the biggest contributors in their community right now. And it's not good. And I'm always a half glass full person, but the reality of it is that we're not seeing anything positive coming through at any length of time. The footy club might have their win, which is great, and that raises their morale. So of course we come into town and we arrive as strangers, leave as friends, and do what we do. So we're very similar to what Are You Bogged Mate does, but on a more localized level. What we're finding is, on a mental health level, the resilience and the support that our rural communities give each other is something that we don't see in city areas. And again, this is why we're talking about this, because it is about kitchen table talk. What are you going to talk about to your mates? And I would like everybody watching this to actually raise the conversation of how you going, mate. But I wonder how our farmers are going, and our small businesses in rural Australia are going, and how is rural Australia travelling? And start having the conversation about what foods we buy, what businesses we support, where we go for our holiday. It's a lifestyle change that we can make in the city by being able to then support our rural communities. Our rural communities need everybody's support, not just other members in the rural community, in the rural setting. We need to have city people bridging the gap and understanding that their food that they buy doesn't have to come from the large corporations. Go and hunt out your local markets, go and hunt out what's online. You know, there's a lot of different businesses coming online, and they need everyone's help, including ours, including mine. I mean, I practice what we preach. So Chris, on a mental health level, do you think city people actually understand what the actual rural communities are going through on a daily basis?
Yeah, I actually do. The conversations that I've had with people, I don't think there's been more awareness in this country of mental health stress, and it happens in the city. The cities are very difficult places to live at the moment. And when there's discussions about mental health in the bush, I think people are beginning to understand that the struggles are a lot deeper and a lot more damaging than they ever have been. They're certainly that way in the city. Things have become completely unaffordable. The stresses of moving from point A to point B are real. And I think a lot has been done in terms of community groups to understand what other people are suffering. And, you know, I hope, and I think, I can only go on what I speak to people about in various groups that I know, but I think there's a real big awareness at the moment for struggles, especially, you know, seeing rural Australia suffer one of the greatest droughts we've ever had, and then some of the greatest floods we've ever had, and then some of the greatest bushfires we've ever had. And I really think there is an awareness. Now, it's hard to measure that, and I can only go on anecdotal evidence, but I think there is, because we're all going through it. And I haven't even mentioned COVID. And so I'd like to hope that we actually have an appreciation for what our fellow man and woman, whether they be in the bush or the city, might actually be impacted by. And it's a discussion that people are having. And quite often, you know, I'll hear from talkback callers, both in the bush and the city, discuss friends that they knew who went through some serious, terrible times, or friends that they've lost because they couldn't go on anymore. These are conversations you wouldn't have on radio 10 years ago. And so anecdotally, I think there is an awareness of that. And you just wouldn't want to put rural Australia through another crisis of the magnitude that we've seen in the last 5 years. And that is coming if we don't do enough when it comes to foot and mouth.
That's right, exactly. And you're just talking about, sorry.
So I was just going to say on that, like coming from a rural perspective, I just want to make it very clear that everybody here is so well aware that if we're having a mental struggles out here are nowhere, they're not of more importance than somebody's in the city. We are struggling together. The issue that probably is missing is that the facilities and our ability to get that support is probably lacking where it is in those urban areas. So that's probably where we need to come at it from. And also just thinking of it, when you get home and you've done your day's work and you've gone and fed cattle if it's a drought, or you've gone and done flood fencing or whatever it is, you then, because of regulation, because of legislation or whatever it is, and this is men and, there are just as many women working on places as well, get home and then you sit down at the computer and you've got to fill in what you've done. You've got to fill in your biosecurity reports. You've got to meet this, reef regulation. You've got to meet all of these regulations. What do they think that does for the home life when there's two kids maybe sitting at the table by themselves eating tea because there's just not enough time in the day for them to have a family meal? They are the implications of regulation that is over and above everybody else's daily work. So that's another thing that many people miss.
It is, certainly. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate this, and I hope everybody that's watching can actually start talking about this across their kitchen table. And just remember, there's so many facilities online to be able to be educated. The Green Shirts movement, your website's amazing. Your Facebook is always updated. Martin gets on there and puts his very frank viewpoints across, which is great, because again, we have to break down the language and we have to bring it down to kitchen table talk. I'm just going to finish on one note, and that is hunt out all your local producers. So I think there are sites like Buy From the Bush. Our Facebook page, we often put up different links up there where you can actually go shopping. Support people like Rachael. Support people in the rural communities that are making amazing things that you can buy online and have shipped right to your door. Keep our money in the country. Stop and have a think about the Rachels in the world. And I love talking to women in the bush, because I'm not a feminist by no means, but I just love the resilience of, you're a mum and you've got to go through all of this, just like our mates in the cities. But as you pointed out, there's a little bit more to it. And it's very, very long days. So Chris and Rachael, thank you so much. And this was our very first one. Keep an eye out. And if you've got a topic that you want us to talk about, if you don't understand anything, just jump over to our Facebook page and message us and we'll address it, and we'll go from there. So remember, Aussies helping Aussies. If you want to donate $5, 1000paddocks.org, so we can keep going out, doing the miles, bringing the smiles, and helping the Rachels and her family out there in rural Australia. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Rachael.
Thanks, Anita. Thanks, Rach.
No worries. Thank you. See ya.